I'm Social Free State of www.socialfreestate.com. I'm a victim of the migrant crisis, the migrant rape crisis in Europe, and my case is still open, so I have to remain anonymous. And I'm speaking about political correctness, how it enables crimes and how it also silences the victims of crimes, as well as other frustrations with society today. This is something which just... there was a comment to Caitlin Spencer. Now, Caitlin Spencer is one of the victims of the Rotherham grooming gang, with the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs in Rotherham, and she's speaking out about it herself, and she's also written, she has a book out, which I highly recommend you read to get more insight and her own insight into the situation, and that's Caitlin Spencer. I'll put a link for her book in my description box. So she was targeted by pro-life campaigners on Twitter regarding the fact that she'd had abortions or an abortion or abortions, I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't know the full details because I'm not in a position right now where I'm ready to read a book regarding all of these, all of this sadness. But I believe that she had abortions because she was raped, probably by hundreds of people. And it got me thinking about the possibility of whether I had been pregnant. The reason why I say that is because obviously I was raped by this Asian man, and Asian I mean Indian Pakistani, in my home, and it was literally a week later that I had to undergo brain surgery. So while I guess most people are dealing with the fact that they've been raped, I wasn't really concentrating on that, which is probably why it was wiped from my memory. I was concentrating on another thing which I had to endure in the future, which was brain surgery. I was very aware that my brain would be open to disease and infection for several days while my skull had been removed. I was very aware of the fact that I might come out paralysed, or have a stroke, or possible death, or all sorts of problems could arise from the brain surgery. So while other people who had been raped might still be dealing with trauma, I was dealing with an extra trauma which I knew that I had to yet endure. So I wasn't really thinking about other situations which other people might have been. I don't know. I mean, it's a very traumatic experience anyway, so no one thinks in a correct manner or a scripted manner, because we just life isn't scripted in that way, and sometimes I think that people do feel that it is. So basically I was sort of preparing myself for this surgery, and having my skull removed was a very daunting idea in that situation anyway. When you get to the hospital for for this kind of surgery, they ask questions and they ask you to sign the questionnaires, and they'll give you lots of information which you have to sign, and that's for their insurance purposes. And one of the questions was, is there a possibility of pregnancy? And that was quite alarming to me, because then I had to start thinking about what had happened. Because I wasn't in a relationship, I wasn't on any contraception. The rapist hadn't used a condom, so there was a possibility that I could have been pregnant. You know, obviously it was only a week after, so, you know, there wouldn't have been much development if it had been the case. But regardless, I suppose I'm questioning if people feel that but my following actions would be considered abortion-like. I made the statement that no, there wasn't a possibility, and I did that for so many reasons. There was a chance that, well, if I had said that I could possibly be pregnant, then they wouldn't have done the operation on me. I would have had to wait 18 months again from the point of, you know, of you know, having had a child or whatever. And then I'd also have to explain to them that I had been raped and therefore become pregnant, which would then mean that they would also have to do the psychology and psychiatry tests again, which I didn't want to have to undergo, and I didn't want to think about it. I had waited so long for this necessary surgery. I had been misdiagnosed throughout my life, and I didn't want to wait anymore for this. And this whole possibility was just, you know, God, you know, the whole situation, you know, this is frustration because so many people think it's so straightforward. Oh, well, you get raped, you go to the police station, and it's not. And you know, this is exactly why nothing is so straightforward. And you know, I think it's very naive, the reaction of these pro-life people towards Caitlin. I would probably consider what I did to come under the, you know, the definition of abortion. And it's a shame because I had never considered myself to be one to have an abortion, because I'd always been very careful with my sexual health. So it just goes to show you can be so careful, but you don't know what's around the corner. With regards to with regards to why I had said no, one of the elements was that, in fact, you know, this man was a different race to me. He, you know, it wasn't a child. If I had been pregnant, let's say, and I had gone through with a pregnancy to give birth to a child, this wouldn't have been a child by choice. It would have been a child by force, which I think will put a new mother in a very different mental capacity to a mother who had a child by choice. And also because of the opposing the differences with ethnicity, myself being white and the rapist being brown-skinned, then there would be this constant reminder that that child had been born through rape, you know. And I suppose, I don't know that was running through my mind at the time, but I don't really know what was running through my mind at the time, because, you know, it was a few years ago, but all I knew was that I needed to have this surgery. It was absolutely necessary. So I suppose, you know, having these political views on such things, you know, but everything is very clear and direct and black and white within life is very odd to me, I suppose. But I know that I'm guilty of black and white thinking myself, so, you know, I try to be open-minded, but I certainly can be guilty of black and white thinking myself. Obviously, you know, I feel that some people watching this will feel very angry because they might be pro-life. And the reason why I'm doing this on YouTube is because I don't want to go through mainstream media to talk about this, because I feel that I would be suppressed in some manner of speaking, because they obviously have an agenda, and they obviously, you know, they would do the but not all migrants at the end of it, which I know not all migrants do this, but there is a crisis, and when there's a crisis, you can't start excusing people. You have to accept the fact that yes, there are migrants who are doing this and it's harmful to society, so let's talk about it. But anyway, you know, from a point of view that pro-life people will get annoyed, then I'm absolutely certain that they will be. But I didn't come onto YouTube knowing that I was going to get an easy time, and I certainly haven't been when I've spoken about all of this through internet and social media. And obviously neither is Caitlin Spencer, and I feel so bad for her, for all the conflict that she received, having been so brave to speak out. Obviously I mentioned earlier that the rapist didn't use a condom. I suppose rapists don't. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know whether they do or not. But regardless, I obviously had to go for tests for STDs and HIV and what have you. That in itself was a very horrible situation, because I was sat there waiting, and you'd see couples together, you know, and I've done that myself, you know. You're in a new relationship and you just want to check each other's health and be with each other and what have you. So there were lots of couples there, and I was on my own, and I suppose part of me felt that I was being judged in some way, maybe for being a bit of a slag or something, when really I was there for the fact that I had been raped, and I wasn't able to tell anybody, and it was a very difficult time, because obviously I'd just gone through brain surgery, which was huge deal in itself. I'd obviously gone through the rape as well, and then all of a sudden you're going on to the next part of it. Obviously, you know, you know, any medication which I had would have did cease if I had been pregnant, any pregnancy. So there was no pregnancy, but then there was the STI tests and all of that kind of thing. So it seems never ending, a never ending fight after you have been raped. Well, after those tests, you know, they came back clear of infection and disease, thankfully. But you know, the thing is, I think that people feel that you're raped and then that's it. You report it to the police and then that's it. And it's not like that at all, because there are some people who are pregnant of rape and go on to have their children. Some of these children, the rapists are of a different ethnicity, so the children are of a different ethnicity. So there is an ongoing struggle. And even if they don't have children, then they still have to go through the tests, the HIV and STI tests afterwards, and wait for that. Wait to hear what brings from that. And then, of course, you have to go through this long situation of the compensation, which I'm dealing with, and that takes years as well. And then you have to wait for the compensation, if you do win that case, to be received, which is another several years. So really, you're not rid of this trauma. You're not. It doesn't just disappear like that. You have to struggle through, and it's a continuous struggle. And for those who did have children through rape, there's no doubt in my mind that it's so difficult, especially if there's a conflict in ethnicity involved, I suppose. But it's a real struggle to learn to, with your feelings and your emotions with regards to this child that you've had. And there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of women in these situations can learn to love their children. And they must, a lot of them choose to bring these children up. So they obviously intend to love these children and provide them with a good home. And, a lot of credit to them for doing that for doing that. And what wonderful, strong women they are, really, to be able to do that. I don't really have a point with this. It's just that comment reignited some memory in me, and it's peculiar because the strangest things will reignite different memories in you, and obviously it's very strange when that happens. But I thought that I would explain what happened in the hospital with that question, is there a possibility of pregnancy, and explain my circumstances, just because it was fresh in my mind. And I thought that people might have an opinion on it. Even if you don't, at least you understand that nothing's a straightforward pathway. There's all these different roads and lanes which lead off it. So nothing's plain and simple, as you can see. Please go and visit my website, socialfreestate.com. I'm on Twitter, and you'll get notified when I'm updating my website. I'm on Gab. I'm on Patreon. Thank you to all those who are supporting me on Patreon. Your help is much appreciated and much needed. And I'm also on Minds. And please share my videos if you can, and get the word out on this situation with this rape crisis in Europe and in the UK. It would be really helpful, and I think that it's really important for Americans to hear about this as well, because I suspect that it's going to be heading in your direction too. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. Bye.